I think it's a wise thing to try to learn Prabhupada's mood of humility and try to have a welcoming mood to people who come into our temples and our communities. Rather than, I'm so fired up and I'm going to show all of you how fired up I am. I'm going to blast you out of the water. And really it's a little bit of it, you know what I'm saying? It's a little bit of an ego trick. That I'm going to show you and I'm going to show everyone how fired up I am, and I'm sort of imitating Prabhupada. It just doesn't really work. So you get where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. All of you? Okay. So maybe I'll share some stories. When I was first in India, there was a pandal in Delhi. There used to be these pandal festivals, pandal means a gigantic tent, but it's not like a tent like we think of tents. It was like, holds 25,000 people and, amazing festivals in Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta in those days. So when I first went to India in 1972, I was given this service. So Prabhupada would go up onto the stage of the pandal and speak to the audience, the crowd. But before he would go up there, he would be in a little sort of like what in the theaters in the West they would call a green room. There's like a little room on the side where Prabhupada would receive. He would receive important guests. And so I got this. Was given this service to speak to the guests in this little pre-room before Prabhupada would go up on the stage. So I was really new to India, and this one man came in, and to me, I was looking at him, and I thought, oh, this man is such a sadhu. He looks like such a great devotee. He was wearing white, and he had like a beard, and I thought, oh, such a holy person. But the point I'm making here is Prabhupada could just read the heart, and I think that's something that's wonderful if we can learn. But if we don't really know how to do that yet, maybe err on the side of caution rather than err on the side of, I'm going to just blast you. And so you'll never want to come back to the temple again, right? Well, maybe I'll tell this one story first. My husband, when we were trying to open a restaurant in the Denver temple at one time, and there was this one man, he was an inspector from the city. You work for the city, so you know what I'm talking about. He was an inspector from the city, and it was going to be up to him. He was going to give the thumbs up or thumbs down whether we could open this restaurant in the temple. And so my husband, Anuttama Prabhu, being the friendly guy he is, he said to this man, so have you ever been here before? And this man said, yeah, I was here once before and somebody called me a demon. And it was going to be up to him whether we could open this temple or not. So, you get my point. Okay, so here's this story. I was in this Delhi pandal in this little kind of room section off the stage. And this man came in and I was thinking, he looks just like such a holy person. And he came in, he's speaking to Prabhupada and he's saying, Swamiji, give us your mercy, like that. And I was thinking, wow. And Prabhupada was just so dismissive of this man. So this is kind of the tough, fearless Prabhupada. Prabhupada was so dismissive of him. And he said, I have already given you everything. Still you do not take. Totally dismissing him. I was really shocked. And he said, it is just like a man who has fallen down a well. And he is calling out, give me a rope, give me a rope. But he's like, I've already given everything, still you do not take. And he just, Prabhupada had this gesture that he could just totally dismiss someone by a toss of his head like that. But, so I guess my point is that, we can't do that, and it's a disaster when we do that, because it's important. Once Prabhupada said that anyone who comes to one of our temples is Krishna's special guest. And we have to treat them like that. That, you know, here's an opportunity for this person to somehow connect to Krishna. And that opportunity might not come again. Did you ever hear someone say, you know, when you say, oh, have you been here before? And they say, oh yeah, I was here a few years ago, but nobody talked to me, so I didn't come back. And sometimes we're just in our little, you know, little cliques and our little groups at the Sunday program, and we don't notice that somebody's there, nobody's talking to them, nobody's reached out to them. It's really a problem. And so I guess what I'm sort of begging all of us, thanks. Yeah, I'll probably knock it over. Yeah, so, you know, just try to, I call it radical noticing. You know, notice if somebody's sitting by themselves or frowning or crying. You know, go over and say, hey, you know, welcome, what's on your heart, or whatever you feel like saying. But just people, it's a big problem in this world that people feel very unseen and unheard. You notice that? You ever feel that yourself?
Yes.
That sometimes even someone in your own life, you feel like they don't really know me. They don't really know what I love or what I care about. You know, so yeah, radical noticing. I think, you know, we speak a personalist philosophy, but very often our behavior is not personalist. It can be impersonal. So I think this is what we should learn from Srila Prabhupada, is lived personalism, lived radical noticing, and reach out, you know, outside of our own comfort zone to welcome people. And even, you know, people in our own communities that have been around forever, maybe people that have been coming around forever or whatever. Sometimes we're just dismissive. Rabindranath Swarup used to say this funny thing that he said when he was a young devotee, he would look around the program at the Sunday program and say, oh, it's just the usual characters that always come, no one to preach to. Like, in other words, these are our people. These are the people who are here. These are the people we have to reach out and love, you know. It's not that, you know, yeah, so I was thinking Prabhupada said once that talking about the devotees in the communities, each one of them is better, each and every one of them are better than a king, you know, so changing our attitude to think, instead of, oh yeah, I know him, I've seen her, she's been around, blah, blah, you know, but actually to treat people like the holy people that they are, who, in this rare world, these are the people who want to take shelter of Lord Chaitanya's, you know, Prema Sankirtan. You know, someone who walks in the door, maybe someone who's walked in the door 100 times, whatever, you know. Yeah, so I was saying that Prabhupada would get asked certain questions. Very often he would get asked the same question. And one of those questions that he would also often get asked was, are you seeing God? You know, and sometimes he would answer depending on the mentality of the person. Once he was asked that question in a kind of an arrogant mood from someone who, you know, in sort of a challenging mood. You know how he says in Bhagavad Gita that the inquiry should be in a mood of service and submissive service and inquiry, you know. So he was asked by this person, are you seeing God? And Prabhupada just like shot back, no, because you are standing in the way. It's so funny, right? But then, you know, sometimes very sincerely, someone says, are you seeing God? And Prabhupada says, you're also seeing God? Every day you see the sunrise, you see the moon rise. You're also seeing God. When you taste water, aren't you seeing God in the taste of water? So this is Krishna's direction in the Gita, right? Once he said that even if a drunkard could remember Krishna when he's tasting his wine, that he could become, so a person like that could become Krishna conscious. So once an arrogant young man who actually later became a sannyasi and a leader in ISKCON, and he was a young, just first coming around, he was in this cocky, challenging mood. He asked Prabhupada, he thought, okay, this is a Swami, he knows everything, and I should challenge him, and, So he said, here's a wise man, I'm gonna, trick the Swami, right? So he said, how many windows are in the Empire State Building? Such a crazy question, And Prabhupada said, how many drops of water are in a mirage? You fool. How many drops of water are in a mirage, And you know how we chant in the morning at the temple the offenses to the holy name? And that one offense is trying to make a mundane interpretation on the holy name. I mean, great acharyas do make interpretations of the holy name, but the offense is a mundane interpretation of the holy name. So once Prabhupada was speaking at Harvard, and this young Harvard student, big intellectual, right, quite pompous and posturing, and so he's saying, Swamiji, what is the meaning of Hare Krishna? Bless you. And Prabhupada said, you are an educated young man. These are proper nouns. You should know. There's no translation to a proper noun. Somebody's name, you don't give. So Prabhupada just wouldn't play that game with him. He didn't want to give food for mundane thought for this particular young man. So he didn't indulge arrogance or posturing. He could read the heart. Maybe, here we are in Philadelphia, maybe some of you know this story. This was kind of a big scandal in the Philadelphia community years ago. Maybe you might have heard Ravinda Swarup tell this story. So there was a scholar here in Philadelphia teaching Hinduism. You know this one? And he came to see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was sitting in his asana, and Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, his disciple, who was a great scientist, was sitting next to him. And so they introduced this man to Prabhupada, that he's a professor of Hinduism. And Prabhupada said, oh, you are teaching Hinduism. What is Hinduism? And he gave this really, postmodern kind of answer. You know what I mean by postmodernism? So he said, nobody really knows. I mean, you can't really say, no one really knows what is Hinduism. That was his answer. And so Prabhupada just looked at his disciple Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, and he said, he says he is teaching Hinduism, but he does not know what is Hinduism. What does that mean? And Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj goes, Prabhupada, it means that he's a cheater. And Prabhupada goes, yes, he is a cheater. And it was a big scandal in the community because, everybody he became offended and left and everything. And the Indian community here in Philadelphia, any of you remember this story? The Indian community was very upset. How dare Prabhupada insult this big scholar, and it was a big uproar and all of this. And and then apparently the later part of the story is that sometime later he came back and he told Ravinda Swarup that Prabhupada saved, it's gonna make me cry. Prabhupada saved him. He was actually from a Vaishnava, he was from a Vaishnava family. But he had, degraded into this very modernistic kind of thinking. And he told Ravinda Swarup Prabhu, he said, Prabhupada saved me because I was a cheater. And Prabhupada brought him back to his actual, the understanding of his upbringing, his childhood, the authentic teachings he'd been given in his youth, So, so So back to why am I talking about this? Because I feel like, yeah, again, I just want to hammer in, I don't want to be too hammering, but I just want to hammer in this point that I think sometimes in ISKCON, we, or devotees in ISKCON, we like to act or show up that I'm very fired up and almost imitating Prabhupada. So that's a little different from imbibing the mood of Srila Prabhupada, which I think it's safer for us to lean into the humility and generosity, kindness of Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, you know, when we're sort of imitating, impersonating, with no realization, no actual personal gravitas or realization, it becomes a parody. I was thinking about how we're talking about Vaisheshika Prabhu, right? So they have, you know, they call the Silicon Valley Temple ISV, ISKCON Silicon Valley, but it also stands for, anybody know what else it stands for? It's ISV. It stands for Individual, Spontaneous, and Voluntary. And that's a quote from Prabhupada that he said, devotional service should be individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. Nobody should feel forced or, you know, to do any service, because everyone here is coming to make an offering of their heart, and it shouldn't be offered or pressured in a different way. So that ISV, individual, spontaneous, and voluntary. I have a nice story I'd like to tell. I think I told this last night when I was downtown, that, so this young man came to the temple. His name was Stephen. He wasn't initiated. And this was in the days of the first temple, 26 2nd Avenue. And there was going to be the very first initiation. And this young man named Stephen, he was invited to be one of the first initiates. But he was a very humble person, kind of an introvert. He was a writer. He later became Satsvarupa Das Goswami. Maybe you read Prabhupada Lilamrita. If you haven't read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, I suggest that that's the very first book that devotees should read. It's the very, very first book, because when you read that book, you get a sense of who Prabhupada is and what sacrifices he made to bring us this Krishna consciousness. That's a wonderful book to study. It's like 7 volumes or something. If you can't handle all 7 volumes, there's a condensed version in one paperback. But I really highly recommend it. So anyway, Satsvarupa Das Goswami is the one who wrote that Prabhupada biography in several volumes. And at this point, he was just a young man coming to the temple for the first time. And he was doing a service for Prabhupada. He was typing up. Prabhupada had so many manuscripts ready to be made into books. And so Stephen at this point was typing up these manuscripts, and every week he'd go to Prabhupada's apartment and bring the completed typing work. And so the initiation, the first initiation, was on Thursday night, the night before, and he was invited to take part, but he skipped out on that. He didn't feel qualified. In one sense, you know, a lot of people are here taking the disciple course. In one sense, we're never qualified. You know, it's a mercy coming down. So we want to grab that mercy in a very sincere way. Anyway, he didn't feel qualified. So the next night, he came to Prabhupada's apartment with his typing work completed. And Prabhupada came to the door, and he accepted the service from Stephen. And then Prabhupada looked at him and he said, this is so beautiful. Prabhupada looked at him and he said, if you love me, I'll love you. You know, you get the point? What do you think the point is here? Anybody want to call out? Yes, what's the point?
Because he didn't go.
Because he didn't go to the initiation. That's one part of it. What else? Anybody else have what comes up for you here? What was he doing that was kind of a misunderstanding or a mistake in his devotional service. He was doing it. Anybody want to shout out something? He didn't show up. You're right. He didn't show up the night before, which is all right.
He was doubting.
Maybe he was doubting. Maybe he didn't think he was ready. What else?
It's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street. Right. That's great. What do you mean? You want to unpack that a little more?
Just that, I mean, we take shelter of the Guru is giving, but we also are giving, so it's,
It's reciprocal.
yeah, it's reciprocal.
It's reciprocal, yeah.
Prabhupada, in Satyabhama says, Prabhupada read his mind. That he took Prabhupada said, if you love me, I'll love you too. He wanted Prabhupada to love him. But Prabhupada told him, you have to trust me, you have to love me, and I'll love you too, I'll love you back.
Wow, isn't that beautiful? It's, you love me, I'll love you back. Isn't that the way Krishna is sitting in our hearts? You know, he's waiting for our love. But we're so like, nah, I can handle it. No, I don't need to turn toward you. I've been turning my back toward you for so many millions and trillions unlimited births. I'm all right the way I am. You know, so what else? I want to tease out more. Anybody else have any thoughts about this? What was going on here? What's going on here? Prabhupada said, if you love me, I'll love you.
I would imagine Stephen had a lot of self-doubt, you know, like you were saying, he didn't feel qualified to take it, but in service, you know, doing the service for Prabhupada. You know, that was a loving exchange, right?
Prabhupada was looking for a loving exchange, right? So, do you think what he was doing was maybe a little bit mechanical?
Yeah, maybe.
Like maybe, you know, I'm checking the boxes, right? I'm checking the boxes, I'm doing the work, I'm doing the typing, I'm bringing it every Friday night. But he was a little reserved about giving his heart. So that's my point here, that we have to give our hearts, you know. Maybe you're showing up to do an arti at the temple, or dress the deities, or cook an offering, or, you know, wash some pots. And that's glorious, because of all the people in Philadelphia, you know, look around the room. These are the people who are showing up to do those wonderful services. But still, you know, if I don't give my heart, then I won't be feeling as happy. And Krishna won't be feeling as happy either, right? Because that's what he wants, right? He wants that more than the chapatis or the puris or the dressing. He wants your heart. He wants our love. Yeah. And I think it's really, really an important point. There's another story about Srila Prabhupada that so the very first devotee who came in London, so these devotees came from San Francisco, three couples went to London, and the first new devotee who came there was a British man, young British man named, who became Kula Shekhar. And he brought his father to meet Prabhupada, and Prabhupada had a nice conversation with his father. And then some years later, this Kula Shekhar was serving at New Vrindavan in West Virginia. Like 7 or 8 years later or something, and Prabhupada asked about his father. Isn't that amazing? I mean, that in itself is amazing. How is your father? And then he said, oh Prabhupada, my father is just wasting his life like an ass, working like a karmi, wasting his life. And Prabhupada said, you should never speak about your father like that. You know? He said, your father is my friend. You should never speak about your father like that. And you know, this word that we so often hear in our temples, karmi, it's such an insider-outsider, us and them. It really, I mean, we read the word in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, but it has a different meaning, right? Fruitive actors, right? But it's not meant to be an us and them exclusionary way of thinking. We should never use that word. We should never use that word. If you hear a devotee, I'm on a rampage, a bit of a rampage about this. If you hear a devotee calling someone a karmi, just say, Prabhu, don't call anyone a karmi. I'm a karmi. My heart is full of material desires, but it's a really, it's a pejorative. It creates an insider-outsider mentality, and it's very detrimental. Sometimes, a lot of times people don't even know what it means, but it sounds terrible. There's story when Gauravani was in Gurukula in Gita Nagari when he was really little, and there was one neighbor family that was nice enough to let our kids swim at their swimming pool. Swimming hole in the river. So they had this nice swimming area, and they were letting the devotee kids swim there. And so one of the little boys in Gauravani's class, so the neighbors were letting the devotee kids swim there. And they were also swimming there just one day, the neighbor kids. And this one little devotee boy said, "Let's go swim somewhere else. I don't want to swim with karmis." And he's like 5 years old. He doesn't know what a karmi is. But it sounds terrible, it sounds mean, and whoever heard it was very offended, right? It just sounds really mean, and it's us and them, insider, outsider. So the point is, even our kids pick it up. Yeah, even our kids pick it up from us when we talk like that. And it creates such a terrible kind of insular community. I don't want to live in a community like that. What do you think? Do you want to live in a community like that where people are looking to judge you? Why are you sitting like that? Why? What? I've been here one day longer than you've been here, and I'm going to tell you, come on. That's not what we came here for. We came here because we're trying to taste some sweetness of the holy name, the sweetness of love of God. We want to open our hearts. We want to change our hearts. We didn't come to be maligned, judged, all of that kind of stuff. Nobody came. And Prabhupada didn't come to New York with that kind of, there's so many rules. Once he said, if I told you all the rules, you would faint. Right, Sharmila? Sharmila's from the Madhva Sampradaya. That's why I keep referring to her. She knows all the rules, It could make you crazy if you knew all the rules, and Prabhupada knew that. If I tell you all the rules, you would faint, So, yeah. There's another sweet story from Kulashekar that I wanted to share. So Kulashekar was a nice devotee. He was from Britain. And so he asked Prabhupada, he said, "Prabhupada, I know you said that Radha Vrindavan, that Vrindavan Chandra, that Londonishwara is your most favorite deity. And I know you said you think he's the most beautiful, but since I've been at New Vrindavan, I was thinking that maybe Vrindavan Chandra is the most beautiful. But I don't want to be thinking something that you're not thinking, Prabhupada. So which one do you think is the most beautiful?" It's kind of a really sweet, kind of intimate question. And so Prabhupada answered so diplomatically and charmingly. He said, Londonishwara is city beauty, and Vrindavan Chandra is village beauty. And then he said, and of the two, village beauty is higher. Of course, he didn't say that in London, right? It was so sweet. So sweet. Yeah. There's another really sweet Philadelphia story that, I don't know if all of you or many of you have heard these stories, but beautiful stories. So Prabhupada was visiting here, and the devotees rented one half of a duplex apartment where Prabhupada could stay for a few days. And so the devotees were waiting outside, waiting for Prabhupada to come out on a walk. And so there was this elderly lady sitting on the front porch of the other side of the duplex, sitting in a chair on the front. Anybody heard this one? Oh, good. So anyway, she's sitting outside, and all this whole pack of devotees, these strange people dressed in weird sheets, right? They're standing on the other side of the duplex, and she's watching this. And so the devotees are waiting for Prabhupada. Prabhupada comes out, and they're expecting that he's just going to walk right out to the street and go wherever they're going on the walk. Prabhupada didn't do that. He came out of the door, and he turned right around, and he went over to this elderly lady, and he started talking to her, and he started talking what Rabindra Swarup Prabhu called old people's talk. And he's saying to her, do you have any grandchildren? Do you still have all your teeth? See, I still have all my teeth. He's having this like, and Ravindra is saying that the devotees are like, why isn't Prabhupada telling her to chant Hare Krishna? What's going on here? So you see how in the box we are and compared to Prabhupada? So I'm just making a humble plea that we can get out of the little theological or so-called Krishna conscious boxes and step out and really offer our hearts, to Krishna on our own account, but also offer our hearts to other people. Sometimes you see somebody just, you'll be at the temple and you see somebody sitting in a corner by themselves. Maybe they're crying, maybe something's going on. And, this kind of radical noticing, we can actually avert, we've all heard the statistics, right, about suicide, about grief, about loneliness. What was Anutama Prabhu was saying in class this morning, that the Surgeon General, who's an Indian guy, by the way, he said that there's an epidemic of loneliness in this country right now. Epidemic is a big word. I mean, just imagine an epidemic of loneliness. So to be able to just, I'm calling it radical noticing, to be able to reach out when you notice, sometimes just a smile, just a, anything I can do to help, just a little noticing. This one devotee was saying he was out distributing books. 3 people that day told him that they were planning to take their own life. One man told him, he showed him the rope. He already had the rope. So how sad this is. I'll tell you another story. Once I was at any of you ever been to the wonderful temple in Pune, in India? Really nice temple. You've been there? Really nice temple. So there's this brilliant ISKCON leader, Srila Prabhupada, and he said this most stunning. He's been to Delaware, no?
Yeah,
he came to Delaware. So he said something one morning after Mangalarti. He really, really struck me. He had read in the newspaper that some what they call IIT topper. You heard this term from India. He's like, IIT. Those are the top most brilliant. Hard to get into universities. So this one student was an IIT topper. He's at the top of his class in one of the top universities in India. And the newspaper article said that he took his own life. And he left a note that I don't see any point in living. My life is useless. I don't see any reason to continue living. And so Radhesham was telling this to the whole community of devotees after Mangalarti. And why is he telling everybody this? He said, he so compassionately, so beautifully, he said, this is our fault. Can you imagine? He said, this is our fault because we didn't reach him in time. We didn't reach him in time to show him, to give him the holy name, to give him some kind of hope that your life has purpose, that you are sacred. Your life has purpose. You can experience the joy of Krishna's holy name. I was so struck by that, though he said that this is our fault. So I'm just kind of putting it out there. I'm kind of throwing down the gauntlet is actually what I'm doing. Can we change our mentality? Can we change our thinking? Can we open our hearts, to care? That it's not just, I like coming to the temple, the Devis are so beautiful, and then I go home, or I do a little service and then I go home. No, it's about sharing this. This is what Lord Chaitanya, this is what Prabhupada asked of us, to share it, but not in a mechanical way, but in a heart-to-heart way, really touching people's hearts. So I guess that's what I'm talking about here. To not imitate Prabhupada and pose like I'm some kind of a big posturing, egoistic, something or other, but actually imbibe Prabhupada's welcoming kindness. Because everybody needs appreciation, everybody thrives on appreciation, right? And everybody comes to our temples as a volunteer. And you know what? So many devotees, people in this world are carrying so much pain and so much trauma. You know, we've all heard stories that are so heartbreaking. Maybe you're feeling that in your own heart, but what about other people, you know? Yeah, what about other people? So what do you guys think? I would like to have some kind of a discussion and conversation. I was going to mention one other thing Prabhupada wrote. I didn't bring my other book, but Prabhupada wrote this beautiful letter to the devotees in Los Angeles once. And I had it written in my book, but he said, he was thanking the devotees with so much humility and gratitude. He was saying, I mean, this is, you know, Prabhupada's kind of ragtag band of incompetent people. Us, you know, we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to do anything properly, basically. You know, maybe we went to India and learned a few things, maybe not. But anyway, Prabhupada wrote this letter, and he said, you are all representatives of my Guru Maharaj. Otherwise, how could I be successful in this mission when I came here alone and empty-handed? You know, Prabhupada, penniless and starving, basically. He was starving in New York. He said he was having night pains. What does that mean? You ever have pain in your stomach at night from not eating? Wow. You know, maybe you have a tummy ache because we ate too much. But what about pain in your stomach because you haven't had a meal, you know? So Prabhupada's writing, yeah, you're all sent by my Guru Maharaj, representatives of my Guru Maharaj. Otherwise, how could I be successful? You know? And sometimes I think, you know, sometimes devotees say, well, the only thing that's important is what's in Prabhupada's books, and not his interactions, not the anecdotes, not the stories, not the conversations. But, you know, I have a response to that. Prabhupada could have actually sent those books on the Jaladuta, right? He could have packed up those trunks and sent the books. He could have saved himself a lot of time and trouble. He didn't have to leave Vrindavan and come personally. But he did have to come personally because there's two things. There's the book Bhagavat, maybe you've heard this before. There's the book Bhagavat, and then there's the person Bhagavat. So both are essential because there was no audience for Prabhupada's books when he came. No one knew. You ever hear the story of Prabhupada at 26 Second Avenue, this scholar, Tom Hopkins from Franklin, here in Pennsylvania, Franklin Marshall College. He came, he had done a PhD thesis on, I think it was Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he came into this little so-called temple, little storefront, rundown storefront, practically on the Bowery. And, you know, there was a book there, and he saw it was the very book he was studying in his university work. And he asked this one devotee who was there hanging around, it was Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Prabhupada's, one of Prabhupada's books that he brought. And he asked this devotee who was just hanging out there, maybe a devotee, maybe just a new guy. He said, well, what is that? And this young man said, I don't know, I think it's something like Bhagavad Gita. You know, he didn't know what it was. And this Tom Hopkins was like so amazed that, you know, here's this most elevated scripture being brought to this ragtag little storefront on the Lower East Side. Yeah, so there was no audience for those books. Prabhupada had to come himself to create an audience. You know, usually when an author writes a book, or the publisher wants to know, well, who's the audience, right? Who's the intended audience for the book you've written? So Prabhupada, there was no audience. No one understood. No one knew about Krishna so much, you know? So he had to create a community of devotees to appreciate Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So all of these stories about Prabhupada, the anecdotes, the room conversations, Prabhupada's personal interactions are so, so important. And they're also right on the level of Shastra because of the pastimes of a great pure devotee. You know? So what do you guys think? Any particular thoughts on any of this? What is a reflection or what comes up for you? Do you think I'm off the wall? Yes, Prabhu.
How do we spread your message of compassion within our community to maybe the more orthodox
Members of the
members of the
community.
community?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's a matter of living it, you know, being it and living it and reaching out one by one and making a change. Because we don't want to go down in history as being this sectarian movement that destroyed the mission of Srila Prabhupada, this most compassionate acharya, you know. So I think it's a matter of a one-on-one exchanges, one-on-one changing hearts, reaching out, helping people feel seen and feel heard and not judged. And sometimes it's, you know, you're talking to a child, sometimes you might be talking to an elderly person. You know, we had our temple president, Nanda Vrindavan, gave a class a couple weeks ago in Potomac about protecting children, protecting women, how it's not a matter of control, it's a matter of love, you know. Anyway, some elderly Indian gentleman came up to her afterwards and he said, a lot of the elderly Indian people in our community are feeling abused by their own family members. You know, they're feeling abused by their kids don't want them, they just feel like they're a burden, you know, so much needs to be done. So, but if we're just going through the temple or going through our lives with blinders on, not really caring or noticing, I think it's this is the personalism that Prabhupada taught. This is what we're meant to be receiving in our own hearts and giving out to others. Radical personalism, radical noticing. And I think it's a matter of a one-on-one thing. Notice, you know, not just just jog into the temple, I do my service, you know, notice, you know, where could I be making a difference by a word or a smile or, you know, or something. Or if we hear something in our communities, find out what's the problem here. You know, because right under the surface there could be so much suffering. You know, right in our own communities, or right under the surface, or right in the neighborhood, you know, right in the everywhere, on the street, you know. Yeah. What else? Thank you for that. Yes.
So when someone comes to a temple, like we can approach, as you're saying, one-on-one. But when we are outside, we're meeting different people. We see a lot of older people, you know, who are very sad about something or the other. We can be compassionate, but when we try to bring in, okay, why don't you come to the temple, or if he or she is a Western bodied and following some other religion or something, so they become very cautious, immediately close down, thinking, oh, they're trying to convert me or trying to tell me to do something, because most of them are atheists and not believing in God. So how do we approach those people? Not talk about Krishna, or
I think we have to pray about that. You know, like here's a living being who is probably suffering in this world like I have been suffering, and how can I reach out to them in a way that they can relate, you know, like, you know, so many ways. But we have to kind of use our intelligence and open our hearts. So I guess another point I'm making here is that we kind of tend to dwell in the head space, but we have to drop down to the heart space. So you meet someone you want to reach out to. I mean, many of us are working in offices, or maybe you're teaching, or maybe you're a professor, or maybe you're working in a hospital, or, you know, maybe you're a child going to school. How old are you?
10.
10. What grade are you in? 5th grade. What do you like to study?
Everything except
Everything except
math.
math. Whoa. That's funny. So yeah, you know, she's a brilliant young girl who likes everything except math. So how are you going to reach out to her? You know, are you going to be hammering math? Do math.
I'm trying to reach out every day.
So, you know, this is the genius of parenthood, of being an outreach person. How can you attract the heart? You know, like, I think, you know, we want our kids to love Krishna. They'll love Krishna if you love Krishna. But if I'm hammering them, sometimes people come to Krishna consciousness and their kids are already a bit older, and the parents get all fired up to become initiated and chant 16 rounds, and then they start hammering their 18-year-old, you gotta chant, come on, be sensitive, meet them where they are, or if you have a desk in an office, have some prasadam cookies, everybody needs a cookie, right? Right? So, find a way to, and then you'll be, people will appreciate it so much, I mean, just something as simple as that, having a jar of prasadam cookies on your desk, and then people will come, everybody in the office knows those cookies are free, they're here for you. If you're ever feeling down or you need a cookie, just come and get a cookie from my cookie jar. And sometimes they'll, and here's what I think this is what devotees this is the way the devotees should walk the world. That, whether you're a checkout person in a grocery store, or a mathematics professor, or a professor of Hinduism, or, whatever you're doing, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're a student, the people in your life should see the joy that you're experiencing. And they should feel that it's a bit contagious. Not that I'm so rigid and so judgmental, and that's how I walk the world, and everybody thinks, whoa, this person's so uptight. But people should be coming to you in your office or in your university or in your hospital saying, what is it about you? Something about you. You work for the city, right? What is it about you? What's your name before it was Dronacharya?
David.
So people should be coming up to Dronacharya in the city when he's working and saying, David, what is it about you?
Why are you always smiling?
That's
It's Monday.
What's that?
It's Monday. Why are you always smiling?
Yeah, see, isn't that a beautiful thing? So, my case in point, right? That's completely proves the point I'm making. People come up to him in his work. Everybody's grumpy on Monday morning. Oh, man, gotta show up again. Go through 5 more days until, thank God it's Friday. Why are you always smiling? Isn't that beautiful? So that means that, what does that say to you? Somebody tell me, what does that say to you? What does that say to you?
That person must have found happiness.
He's tasting it, right? This is someone who's living it. He's tasting it, and it's contagious. And I think, we're still a bit worried about COVID. We had a big COVID scare, right? But this is the contagious disease that people should be catching from devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement. That joy, that prema bhakti ras, and maybe think, oh yeah, you're talking about prema. I'm not on that level, but there's some sweetness. There's some reason you come back, right? There's some reason you do this. There's some reason you show up. So share it, pay it forward. And then it will change the world. One person at a time, we can change the world. One heart touching one heart, we can change the world. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Please.
A few years ago, I was staying at Giriraj Swami's house out in California, and there were a lot of gurus staying at the same time. Jimna Swami was there, Burijan Prabhu, Bibi Govinda Swami, Niranjana Swami, it was like a whole bunch of them. So we took our meals together, and they were saying at every meal that they were really disturbed because when they were traveling around the world, their disciples were saying that they weren't reading Prabhupada's books, and not just not studying them, they weren't reading them. And then I brought up the point that when I was traveling around a lot at that time, giving Vaishnavas care seminars, devotees actually said to me, I've never seen Prabhupada move. And I said, what do you mean? I've only seen his picture, he's not moving. And I said, you don't watch the DVDs?
Right.
No, I don't. And I was like gonna cry, I said, you have to watch his DVDs, you have to. His every movement he makes is like like his hand movements, they're like mudras, you know? And they're so beautiful, and he's like so swan-like,
Yeah,
you know?
such a beautiful point. And I
Yeah.
think part of this disciple course that some of you are taking is that we have to know who Srila Prabhupada is.
Yes.
Otherwise, we don't really get it, you know. And I've heard so many devotees say, travel and speak in different places. I've heard so many devotees say, oh, I've only heard stories of Prabhupada smashing people. I never heard any stories like the stories you're telling. You want to hear a really funny story? I'll tell you a great one. Anyway, I only heard stories of Prabhupada smashing people. I think that creates a very skewed impression of who Srila Prabhupada was. Here's a really funny story. So, talking a bit about Prabhupada in context, right? Because he would say things, sometimes he would speak some generalization, and then he would say something opposite, and, you know, anyway, so he went to one temple, and we were all very new, we didn't know what we were doing, so the Gornitai deities had long hair in this one temple, down to their waist, like, kind of like a coat, like a big hair, and Malati was there, and Prabhupada said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not a hippie. The hair is too long, he was not a hippie. But then it was so funny. Right after that, he came, I was in Berkeley, California, so he came to Berkeley. And this is right after Rath Yatra, this is such a funny story. Right after Rath Yatra, one of the BBT artists pulled a copy of Chaitanya, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya off the shelf. And he said, Prabhupada, we often see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had very long hair. And you remember how I was talking about Prabhupada would answer the mentality of the question more than the question itself. So Prabhupada apparently could see that this young man, shaved up young devotee, he kind of wanted to have long hair himself, you know. And Lord Chaitanya had long hair. What's all this about shaving our heads and all this stuff, you know? Anyway, so Prabhupada, right after he'd been to this other temple saying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not a hippie, then he says, yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was a hippie. It's so funny. And then he said, therefore he has come to save you. But because of, I don't know if there's any Bengali people here, but because of his Bengali accent, so in Bengali, the S's are more or less SH, you know, they're a little more, a little less. So we weren't sure if Prabhupada was saying save you or shave you. So funny. And Prabhupada just picked up on that, and he was laughing, and he kept repeating that over again. Yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has come to save you and shave you. Save you. He kept repeating it over and over again. It was so funny. So, yeah. I guess I started off by saying that Prabhupada was like a multifaceted jewel, right? He had many, many sides that were all so glorious and so beautiful. But I think for us, let's pick up on the kindness and mercy, generosity, you know, and share that with the world. And then people can come to ask, well, who is Prabhupada anyway? And does he ever move? The one sitting on that chair, does he ever move? You know, sometimes people think, wow, he's been in meditation a long time. But, yeah, what else? Any thoughts on all of this? Any objections? Anybody think I'm off the wall and what am I talking about this for? Everything's fine the way it is. Why am I trying to cause a problem? What is on your heart? What are you thinking? Anybody want to share any thoughts? Yes, Brahmacharya.
Thank you very much.
Why are you smiling?
Thank you so much for this presentation and this term, radical noticing, radical personalism. I really like it very much. So thank you for bringing this and introducing this to us here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, thank you. We can all be ambassadors of radical noticing, radical personalism, and in this way, cure this epidemic of loneliness, cure this epidemic of suicide, so much destructive behaviors, give people a higher taste. Right? by caring, reaching out to care, you know, not just being in our heads and walking on by, you know.
I was trained in LA in the day by Jayatirtha and Manjuwali. He was the president and his wife, Manjuwali. That we were all the maids and butlers of the deities. So when anybody came, any guests came, not just on Sunday, but any day of the week, we are the maids and the butlers for the Lord. So we greet them, we give them a place to sit, we give them a drink, we give them a plate of prasadam, just some maha if that's all there is, but we greet them. We don't just ignore them.
Right.
It makes a difference.
I mean, it can really change the whole trajectory of someone's life.
I wanted to better understand this interaction between Srila Prabhupada said, if you love me, I'll love you back. Was that?
If you love me, I'll love you.
If you love me, I'll love you. One could think that the answer may have been, I'll love you always, whether you love me or not. My love for you is unconditional. How can we understand something, how are we to understand that interaction? I'll love, if you love me, I'll love you.
Well, let's look at the paradigm of Krishna traveling with us in our hearts, right? Like you have a friend, maybe you have a friend and maybe you've rejected that friend once or twice. They call you, hey, you want to spend the day? No, I'm busy, whatever. And you try a few times, then after a few times you think, well, this person doesn't really want to hang out with me or whatever. But compare that to Krishna, who's been traveling with us in our hearts. We're turning our back on him for millions and millions of lives, going through every species, up, down, and around, animal species, bug, demigod, up, down, and around. And Krishna just travels with us. And he's just waiting for us to turn to him. What kind of a friend is that? But he's such a sensitive friend that he's waiting for us to turn to him. You know, he's not pushing himself on us in an overbearing kind of a way. He's waiting for us to turn to him. So I think that's part of that story that, you know, Prabhupada's love was unconditional. Why did he risk his life? I mean, really, coming to New York like that, I mean, you live in Philadelphia, you're almost New York. Would you go to New York without some cash or a credit card or a phone? I mean, he went all the way across the ocean, you know. I mean, we say he had $7 worth of rupees. Actually, he had to send that $7 worth of rupees to his son after he had the heart attack when the boat stopped in Boston. He sent wired those rupees back to his son to send him some Ayurvedic medicine for his heart. So he had nothing. He sold he sold the 3 volumes of his Bhagavatams to the captain of the ship. So he walked into New York with $15, $5 a piece. You know? So his love was unconditional, but still it's like, you know, I'm not going to force my love on you. I'm waiting for the reciprocation of your heart. So we can be overbearing in our love, like, you know, but Krishna's not like that. He's waiting for, just, do we really want his love? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was a personal exchange. Srila Prabhupada knew him. It wasn't just that he was trying to, he knew him. They had a relationship. And so in that relationship, he said what needed to be said at the right time to the right person, so that the exchange could be opened up further.
Right.
That's love, that's affection.
To churn the heart,
Yeah.
churn the, you know, maybe the relationship exists, but maybe it needs to go deeper, you know. I know you love me and I love you, but how can we take this to the next level? Like, you know, I mean, he was showing up, right? Every Friday night he was showing up with his completed work. So that's something. I was saying last night that you ever hear people say 90% of success is just showing up? You know? But he was showing up, which a lot of people were not doing. But Prabhupada wanted him to take the next step. Okay, give your heart. Give your heart. You know? Yeah, I want to tell one other story. I want to hear from you guys if you have anything, but I don't want this to have to go on too long because everybody's hungry and everybody's waiting for me to stop talking. But I want to share this one nice story that I think I shared this last night also. Prabhupada, it was Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, and he was sitting on his Vyasasana, and devotees were coming up and saying their offerings, Prabhupada, you're the Jagat Guru, and I'm the most fallen, and all these, very sincere maybe, and maybe very flowery, but all these things. And Prabhupada, so there was one devotee who was sitting like right at the base of the Vyasasana, and he was hearing Prabhupada say under his breath, after each disciple came up, Prabhupada was saying, you become, now you become. Whatever you're saying about me, Jagat Guru, you're the greatest, you saved the whole world, whatever you're saying about me, Prabhupada's flipping it back on you, now you become that. Isn't that beautiful? He wasn't just like, basking in the ego experience of somebody calling me, you're the savior of the whole world, you're the Jagat Guru. No, he was just flipping it back on you, now you become that, you become. Go for it, I mean, yeah. Can I share one more story? Okay, there's another story of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada's guru, and he was, he had the order of his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to take Krishna consciousness to the Western world. He had sent disciples to London and to Germany, and nothing so much had taken hold. And he was sitting in his room, and he was talking to a group of disciples about how he was saying, this is my father's desire, this is the order of my mother that I have to fulfill, the desire of my father that we have to spread Lord Chaitanya's mission in the West. And so who will do that? And he was looking around the room, there are all these brahmacharis, sannyasis, kind of big shots in the Gaudiya mission. And he turned to this one disciple whose name was Narottam-Ananda, and he was a very successful young preacher, successful brahmachari, doing preaching in some area and having a lot of success. And so Srila Bhakti Siddhanta turned to him and he asked him, he said, well, you go. But he was very honest, and he said, he started to cry, he said, Guru Maharaj, I'm successful at what I'm doing here, but I know if I go there, I'll just fall down. I know I can't do that, so he was, emotional, he was speaking from his heart. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta was saying, that's all right, don't worry. And there was one Grihastha man, Abhay Babu, was sitting in the corner of the room, very unimportant person in the mission, And Prabhupada, so he's relieving this important brahmachari, he's saying, that's all right, don't worry. He says, don't worry. And then he just looked over in the corner, he said, don't worry, Abhay will do. Abhay will do it. And this young brahmachari, he recounted this story years later, It's like, who? What? Abhay, Babu, Abhay? It's like, huh? He just looked and amazing, So amazing. So don't think, you can't do something. From your point of view, with your own sensitivity, you meet someone, you feel like I should do something to help encourage them. Pray to Krishna for the intelligence what to say. You like vegetarian food? Pray to Krishna something. And they're not all atheists. Many of them are spiritually inclined people. Yes.
Many times we forget that whatever we are learning or reading, and we don't become the masters of those. So how do we constantly hit ourselves that we need to practice what we are learning and what we are teaching?
Repeat it to someone. That's a very effective method. When you read something that's wonderful, that even if you go to a Bhagavatam class and you feel like, oh no, it's this person, they really shouldn't have come, it's going to be really boring. But there's one word that you'll find, or one word, you read one of Prabhupada's purports, there's one word, sometimes he says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead should always be victorious. Or this morning in the Bhagavatam class, Nitya Prabhu was pointing out that Prabhupada is saying, the devotee should be glorious. You know, just one word. And so share it, you know, whatever catches your attention, share it. And then it will reverberate and become like a domino effect. You know, share one word, share one line, and then it'll go out in the world. I think, yeah.
And we need to practice that too, right? So if we say that we should be tolerant, so we should demonstrate that we are tolerant.
Yeah. Did you ever hear people, devotees say that Krishna consciousness is caught more than it's taught? So it's a contagious disease, but if we keep it locked up in our hearts and we don't, you know, taste it ourselves or we don't share it, then it becomes like a miser. We become like misers. So we're not meant to be misers. We're meant to be givers. You know, share it, give it, taste it. If we don't taste it, we don't. You know, if we're running on empty, then we don't feel very inspired to share it. But if we're tasting it ourselves, just like if you taste something super yummy, what's your favorite sweet? What? Rasgulla. Okay, so you like rasgullas. Somebody else likes gulab jamun. You know, when you taste a rasgulla, you naturally feel like, you say to your friends, you have to taste this. This is so yummy, right? So if we're tasting this Krishna consciousness, naturally we want to share it. But if we're just stuck in the head and we're not tasting it, we're only, you know, stuck inside some kind of theological box, then we don't feel inspired to share it, right? You see what I mean? Thank you all so much. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
One simple question.
Yes.
Rukmini.
Yes.
How do you know Krishna is assisting us? We go through a lot of turmoil, issues, but how do we know? We are just praying to Him every day, but we don't know. Sometimes we are losing hope.
Yeah.
When we go through physical problems and something,
Yeah. Sometimes those problems are Krishna's way of waking us up. You know, otherwise we go through life on automatic pilot thinking we're going to be here forever. I'm going to do my rituals, I'll be here forever, but sometimes those problems of life are a little slap to wake us up, you know. But cry to Krishna. We're meant to cry to Krishna, you know, and ask him to show us the way, you know. Ask him, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know why this happened to me. I don't know why I got this health problem, or my child, or my husband. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what your plan is, so please show me the way. And if we open our hearts to him, I think that's very important. Because we tend to just be like robots. Like, we hear a lot about artificial intelligence. I think our own intelligence can be very artificial. You know? But ask Krishna, why is this happening? What is the lesson I'm meant to learn here? Make it active, make it dynamic, make it vibrant, not dead, not stagnant. And then we'll experience something.
sometimes our meditations go like it's like a ebb and flow, It's so good, and then when you are thinking, oh, it's so going well, and then everything is
right. Like Krishna disappeared from the gopis, right? They're thinking we're the most fortunate women in the universe. We've got Krishna just wrapped right around our finger, and then poof, he just disappears. So, yeah, as soon as we become complacent, we can so easily lose the plot of our lives, right? So we have to be on the edge, like sharpening the sword of our intelligence, our hearts, and begging Krishna, show me what I'm doing wrong. Yeah. Everybody else sees what I'm doing wrong, but I want to see myself, right? Sometimes, like, everybody sees, but I don't see. Rukmini is so rude. She's talking. Everybody wants to have prashad.